Fantasy freaks and geeks, what's going on? James Coe here with you. 15 to 20 minutes is all I need to walk you through this crazy, crazy world of fantasy football. And today it is Friday, man. So you know what this means. I'm going to get you ready for week number 8 by talking about sleepers. Let's freaking go. Okay, we talked about quarterbacks, but you know what? I wanted to add a couple of names here, did a little bit more digging, did a little bit more research, a little bit more film study, and this is what we found. I actually really like Bo Nix against Carolina. We know Carolina is not good. But here's the thing. Bo Nix is actually very quietly starting to develop his command of a very complex Sean Payton offense. I think it's noticeably improved from week number 1. And from a fantasy perspective, he has scored 20 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. And again, it's a fantastic matchup. Carolina has allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, including the 5th most touchdowns. The 70.9% completion rate allowed to quarterbacks, that ranks as 4th worst. That's important for Bo Nix because he has struggled somewhat with accuracy, although the accuracy has certainly picked up over the last 3 or 4 weeks. But you want to get some easy completions for your rookie quarterback, and I think Carolina certainly allows for that as well. At the running back spot, I'm not sure if we talked about Tyler Algier, but I do really like him as a sleeper running back against Tampa Bay. Ray Davis against Seattle. I love this play as well. I think I talked about Ray Davis in my previous episode, but if I have not, the Hawks have been getting absolutely smashed on the run. 129 rush yards per game allowed to running backs. That's the 2nd worst in the NFL. We like James Cook in this one, but again, if we're chasing sleepers, Ray Davis is a very interesting name here as well. I know I didn't talk about Emmanuel Wilson, though, taking on Jacksonville. And I know Emmanuel Wilson has not been great, okay? But the Jags rush defense has been getting, I don't want to say they've been getting bullied, but certainly out of the backfield, they're definitely getting stung. They're definitely getting stung out of the backfield. They are dead last in both receptions and receiving yards allowed to running backs. Now, Emmanuel Wilson has struggled a little bit out of the backfield, but we have seen him make some big plays out of the backfield. As a matter of fact, he has scored on a touchdown on a very long catch and run out of the backfield as well. So we know he has it in him. Okay, so this is more of a deep sleeper play when we're talking about Emmanuel Wilson versus Jacksonville. But in a week where there's not a lot out there in terms of running backs, you might take anything, man. I know there's no bye weeks, but I mean, again, the injuries and the ineptitude and just overall, it's been tough. There's not a lot of sleepers at the running back position. This is a little bit of a foreshadowing here. There's not a lot of sleepers at tight end. But you know what? There's a ton of sleepers at wide receiver. This week is a very good week for sleeper wide receivers. And we'll start with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Taking on Buffalo, DK Metcalf. I think he's unlikely to go with that knee injury, but we'll see. Again, we're still kind of sort of seeing if DK is going to be around, but if he's not, even if he is, I still like JSN, man. If he's gone, though, obviously that would open up a huge target share for JSN, and the Bills have struggled a little bit versus the slot this year, right? They've allowed the 8th most receptions and yards to receivers lined up inside. The 77.6% completion rate allowed, that ranks as the 3rd worst. Other number 2s, like Alan Lazard and Christian Kirk, have posted big games with 15 plus PPR points. I bring up those 2 gentlemen because they were at the time, Alan Lazard's not now, obviously, but at the time, they were the number 2s in their respective offenses while also playing out of the slot. Right. So even if DK goes, Jackson Smith and Jigba is in a really good spot against the Buffalo Bills out of the slot because Tyler Lockett, even though he's a rotational player, when he comes in, he is almost exclusively an outside player. So, by the way, I like Tyler Lockett in this one too, especially if DK Metcalf doesn't go, but JSN for sure, a sleeper in this one. Deep sleeper, Tyler Boyd versus Detroit. There is no team in the NFL that has given up more receptions, yards, and fantasy points to receivers lined up in the slot. Detroit getting burned in the slot right now. DeAndre Hopkins is out of there in Tennessee. Wide open target share. Mason Rudolph found early chemistry with Boyd last week. Okay. Boyd only saw 5 targets, but he did catch all 5 for 43 yards. His 5 receptions did lead the team as well. I bring up a name like Jalen Naylor because he's a completely unknown player, plays, I want to say, primarily out of the slot for the Minnesota Vikings. He's a little bit of an inside look in Minnesota. Anytime you're coming off of the McVay tree, guys are playing inside, outside. It's rare that they play players in just one spot. But if I had to say, I would say, I would say Jalen Naylor is Minnesota's primary slot receiver with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as outside guys, right? Obviously, all 3 of those guys mix it up all around, but Jalen Naylor, when he sees targets, it is generally out of the slot, okay? In this matchup, when we're talking about Jalen Naylor against Detroit, solid game. 4 receptions, 76 yards, 11.6 PPR points in that outing. Now, I bring that up because Jalen Naylor, this random dude out of the slot, Tyler Boyd, I already know what you're thinking. I don't want to play Tyler Boyd. I get it. I understand. But he has one of the best matchups on the board. And you can't tell me he's more random than Jalen Naylor, for God's sakes, okay? Maybe we see unexpected results here from Tyler Boyd this week. And shoot, in redraft, maybe you're not playing Tyler Boyd. That's fine. There's no teams on a bye. I totally get it. DFS purposes, sports betting purposes, okay? You see what I'm saying here? You see what I'm getting at here? Tyler Boyd against Detroit. Go take a look. Cedric Tillman against Baltimore. I really like what I have seen from Cedric Tillman. I'm not going to lie. The Ravens have allowed the most fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers, and Tillman is coming off of a strong game. As a matter of fact, a career game. He set career highs in targets with 12, career highs in receptions with 8, career highs in yards with 81. That is, when you add it all up, that's 16.1 PPR points in that contest. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. And the matchup, like I said, is really strong as well. The Ravens have just been, I don't know what is going on with their pass defense, but they're getting burned. They're getting burned all over the place. That is why I would also say deep sleeper Elijah Moore against this very same Baltimore Ravens defense. The Ravens have allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to the slot, and Moore, the team's primary slot man, is definitely going to see a boost with a functional pocket passer at the helm in Jameis Winston, right? We talked about Jameis in a previous episode this week where Jameis Winston's skill set meshes more. I don't want to say, it's not a perfect mesh with Kevin Stefanski, but it's a better mesh. It's a better, pairing. Jameis Winston with Kevin Stefanski versus obviously Deshaun Watson. That was oil and water, and even DTR. As well, who is more of a mobile quarterback. So Stefanski's scheme obviously, works well with a quarterback under center, and I think that's what Jameis Winston can provide as well. By the way, Elijah Moore coming off a strong outing too, right? 6 targets, 6 grabs for 41. That's good. You'll take that all day long. So not only is Baltimore allowing a 71.7% completion rate to the slot, that's the 10th worst in the NFL. Man, they're giving up chunk plays out of the slot as well. 9.72 yards per attempt is the 3rd worst mark in the NFL. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Romeo Doubs against Jacksonville. Why? Because we are always going to pick against Jacksonville. Always. All right. And usually we'll be all right when you pick against Jacksonville. All right. We're going to bet against Jacksonville because the Jacksonville Jaguars are bad. They've given up the most yards and the 4th most receptions to outside receivers. The 9.76 yards per target allowed, so nearly 10 yards per target allowed. That ranks as the 2nd worst in the NFL. And man, Doubs has been on fire, bro. Like, what is going on? I don't know. He is motivated. This dude he's locked in. He scored 2 touchdowns in week number 6 for 19.9 PPR points. And then he caught 8 balls for 94 yards last week. That was 17.4 PPR points in last week's game. And I'm telling you, my dude's catching everything under the sun. He's snagged 11 of his last 14 targets. That's a 78.6% completion rate when throwing to Romeo Doubs. That's insane. That is amazing. Good stuff right there. Again, if we are picking against Jacksonville, well, shoot, man. I freaking love Christian Watson as a deep sleeper this week, right? We talked about all the things that, the Jaguars can't do against outside wide receivers. Well, shoot, they've given up the second most fantasy points per game on deep passes this year. They've allowed 4 touchdowns on passes of 20-plus yards downfield. That's tied for the second most in the NFL. It's a great matchup. When I'm telling you this, on deep passes, they're very vulnerable. Shoot, well, who are you thinking about? Christian Watson, obviously. I could see them drawing up a couple plays here. I could see Christian Watson having a really nice game. I love the Christian Watson anytime touchdown as well. You're getting really good numbers, really good odds on that one. So just a little something if you're looking in that department. Okay, let's talk about Courtland Sutton taking on Carolina. The Panthers have struggled mightily this year versus outside receivers. They've given up the 5th most yards and, most importantly, the 3rd most fantasy points per game to receivers lined up on the outside. And now I know this one feels disgusting because Courtland Sutton put up a dang 0 spot last week. He did not garner a target. How does Courtland Sutton not garner a target in this particular offense? That is crazy to me. That is absolutely insane to me. But I do think he bounces back. It's a great spot, like I said, against Carolina. Outside receivers, primary outside receivers, so not rando ones, but primary outside wide receivers have put up at least 15.5 PPR points in 4 straight games against Carolina. So again, 15.5 PPR points in 4 straight games for primary outside receivers. I think Sutton gets back on track here, and I think he does it in a big way this week. Ricky Pearsall versus Dallas. I'm not sure how they're going to deploy Ricky Pearsall this week, but my hunch is, given his size and given his man-beating abilities, I do think they will line him up primarily outside. And again, just reading the wide receiver room, like who else is even there right now? They're not going to have Debo. Ayuk's out for the season. Who are they going to throw to? It's Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and maybe Jacob Cowing as well. Obviously, you're going to have George Kittle in the mix here too. But I think Jennings is not really an outside player. I think he's primarily an inside player. He's definitely got to play off the ball. I just wonder if Ricky Pearsall, who again has some serious man-beating chops, can win against Dallas. Because I tell you what, the Cowboys have been getting beat. They've been getting beat by outside wide receivers. They've allowed the 4th most yards to the outside, and they're bottom 5 in completion percentage allowed as well. The 9.82 yards per target, that is dead last in the NFL. Again, 9.82 yards per target allowed, man, dead last in the NFL. Ricky Pearsall has a really good chance to really surprise this week. Sterling Shepard against Atlanta. Earlier, we talked about how I couldn't believe Tampa Bay might be trailing, or basically they're going to be, my thought is that Tampa Bay could be trailing by a decent chunk in this game against Atlanta. Now, if that is the case, it could be a heavier than usual passing script for Tampa Bay, and I do think Shepard could benefit here. The Falcons have allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to receivers in general, not outside or inside, because I think Sterling Shepard's going to be kind of a 50-50 player for Tampa Bay, but the Falcons have allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to receivers in general. All right, let's talk about Tank Dell. It is a wonderful matchup against the Colts, who are bottom 10 in receptions, yards, completion percentage, and yards per target allowed to outside wide receivers. Now, despite that, they have somehow limited outside receivers to just 1 measly touchdown all year long. Those two things don't go together. It doesn't match. You can't be bottom 10 in receptions, yards, completion percentage, and yards per target allowed, and also have only given up one touchdown to outside receivers. That don't add up to me. So I think that changes in a big time way. I know Houston has a bad taste in their mouth after a close loss to Green Bay last week, where they did not play well, and they still probably should have won that game, right? They didn't play well at all. Oh my goodness. So I think this is a little bit of a bounce back week. It's a great matchup against Indianapolis, who has absolutely struggled in the pass defense department, right? And here's my other thing, man. Tank Dell, bro, he's too good of a player to be struggling like this. He's too good. I think this is a slump buster week, and I think he breaks out against a slump buster defense in the Indianapolis Colts. All right, let's talk about tight ends. This is your only one. I've got one. You're probably looking down thinking, my dude James has been talking for 16 minutes. He has not gotten to tight ends. We're running out of time here. It's supposed to be 15 to 20 minutes each and every week. I get it. Grant Calcaterra Cotta Warriors. How you like that one? He had a brutal one-catch effort last week, but I'm going to ride this train again, man. Look, the matchup is quote-unquote nicey, as John Gruden would say. Have you guys seen this John Gruden TikTok, bro? I swear to God, I spent 30 minutes trying to figure out if it's AI. This is so unhinged and so weird and so whack, man. I'm like, there's no way this is really John Gruden, but it really is. I think. I don't know. Hit me up, man. If it's fake, can somebody let me know? Because, man, I'd spent entirely too much time trying to figure out if it's real or not. I think it's real, though. It's so crazy. I thought it was AI. Anyways, going back to Grant Calcaterra. Over the last 3 weeks, okay, the Bengals have given up 9 or more PPR points to 4 different tight ends. 3 of them, though, came in one game versus Baltimore. They had 3 guys, Baltimore did, score 9+ PPR points in that game. But again, look, Grant Calcaterra taking on the Bengals, and the Bengals have allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to the tight end group, including the 8th most receptions and the 7th most yards per game. I think Grant Calcaterra has a nice little bounce back week here this week. Hopefully he'll get into the end zone. Actually, to be honest with you, are we hoping that he gets in the end zone? Maybe we are. If you're going up against A.J. Brown, you want this dude to get in the end zone, okay? Either way. But again, Grant Calcaterra, solid matchup against Cincinnati. I would say go ahead and look for him in DFS. And again, like I said, player props. Grant Calcaterra. Let's ride, baby. Let's go. And that's it. That's it for the group of tight ends. There's nothing else. There's absolutely nothing else. I'm trying to stretch it out. Shoot, I'm stretching it out with Grant Calcaterra, who's a deep sleeper, bro. This position group's an absolute dumpster fire mess right now, man. It's crazy, bro. Anyways, whatever. There you go. That's your sleepers for the week, man. I hope everyone scores a bunch of points out there. Go win your matchups. Don't be like me. Go win your matchups right now. I'm in the doldrums, bro. I'm so depressed. Anyways, it's all good. Maybe I'll share that story next week. Anyways, we're good to go, man. And remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams. All right, peace.